In an email to close friends, Perry only says that on July 8th, he will be, quote, making an announcement around midday in San Antonio concerning his exciting future plans.
He's been an excellent governor. There's no disputing that.
But John Griffing with the Houston Young Republicans doesn't see him as President Perry.
Well, I think many Republicans in Texas would be warm towards the idea of a Perry candidacy, but there are still larger numbers who are concerned, especially after the last bid, that it might bring negative publicity to the state of Texas.
It's the much bolder Ted Cruz who's the top choice among the majority of Texas Republicans.
The center want principles, the center want bold colors, and I think Ted Cruz brings that to the table.
Conservative watchdog groups have gone on the attack, calling for change.
Well, of course, we had Burqa Day in Lumberton a few weeks back, but controversial lessons, these are important issues to focus on, but it's not the only issue. Lack of parent access, the fact that teachers are still liable if they share content outside of classrooms with parents. These are issues that need to be addressed right now up front if this product is to stay viable.
I think it was less about politics in this case for the Republicans and more about reacting and responding to what many felt was a loophole, a vulnerability in the abortion industry that needed to be addressed in Texas. I don't think a challenge is going to be successful, though a challenge is consistent with the pattern of behavior we've seen on the left and from the Democrat Party over the last few years.
We've got people that are so lacking in decorum and decency that they're willing to chant "Hail Satan" at a crowd of peaceful Christians singing Amazing Grace while abortion survivors give their life story. How have we gotten to this point? That's point one. Point two, this is not about women's health care. You mentioned doctors having to shut down. Well, supposedly we're being told that all these Planned Parenthoods are providing mammograms and women's health care. Then why did the CEO fly down? Why did Planned Parenthood get involved in this? Well, here's the answer. Late-term abortions are the most profitable and expensive procedure provided by Planned Parenthood at some $1,000 per procedure. Regular abortion procedures only run you about $400. It's about money. It always has been about the money. You're talking about preserving the profit margin of an industry here. This is not about a war on women. This is about protecting an industry.
If you disagree, they're nothing more than an unruly mob. John Griffing disagrees.
We're looking at the mob tactics in play and how this has been used to overcome the legislative process in spite of a majority in favor of passing all of these bills.
Griffing, a vice president of Houston Young Republicans, developed this YouTube video attacking their tactics.
The left-wing extremist mob is back, derailing the democratic process to protect their entitlement agenda.
Rush the floor. Total chaos is the only way to stop this. And there were hundreds of such tweets. So that attitude, that mindset, we feel is inappropriate within the context of civility.
The legislative body was busy over the weekend pushing through a dozen gun bills.
I think what you saw achieved was that we were denying the efficiency of background checks and of stricter gun laws on reducing gun violence. Imagine how short and how short Sandy Hook might have been and how many lives might have been saved had at least one teacher been armed and trained.
The National Rifle Association has made its presence known right here in Houston, and there's a local organization playing a vital role. It's the Houston Young Republicans.
My name is John Griffing. I'm with Houston Young Republicans. HYR has a renewed focus on gun rights and the place of gun rights in the national fabric. Gun control laws have failed wherever they're implemented to reduce violent homicides and gun-related violent crime.
At a forum inside this Washington Avenue restaurant, it is the Houston Young Republicans asking the question.
This event was the result of several members coming forward and saying, you know what, this is something we need to finally examine and address as a party.
Weekend passes from prison.
Tough on crime has been a Republican mantra for 25 years, but some in the GOP are now calling for a more nuanced approach.
You've got George H.W. Bush, who was the gentleman who came forward and said, let's have a war on drugs, let's end this problem, let's approach it in a military context. That hasn't worked out so well.
It's a controversial curriculum program that has been the target of conservatives here in Texas. And now that C-Scope is virtually no more, John Griffing here in Houston says it's time to look at their financial books.
C-Scope identifies itself as a curriculum management system. The overall vision initially was to provide a means of helping teachers and school districts meet the new state Texas educational knowledge and skills requirements. We had over 875 total schools using this product. That's about 80% roughly of all public school districts in the state of Texas. There was a significant amount of controversy over bias in social studies content, lack of completion in math standards. There were gaps identified in science standards. What is still at issue is the financial mismanagement aspect of C-Scope. You have a nonprofit using taxpayer funds exclusively paying people, appropriating monies without disclosure. We'd like to go ahead and move forward with full financial transparency.
Well, what has happened is that we have a so-called curriculum management system, which is really a private nonprofit, which was set up illegally without the approval of the state legislature, a third party really, dictating curriculum content and lesson plans to 80% of Texas public schools. This happened piecemeal over the last 8 years. This curriculum system is now in 80% of Texas public schools. Why does it matter? Why should people care? Real quick. Number one, C-Scope is designed to produce incompetent, unskilled vassals of the state, not thinking, participating citizens. Number two, the content is so academically deficient that even students can identify errors. One ninth grade lesson asks students to circle capital letters in a sentence. Come on, are we serious here? Number three, social studies and geography teaches that capitalism is obsolete and communism is the best economic system. Well, Sam, there's a problem in America right now. We are failing to grasp and understand the real issue behind things like what happened in Boston. And I'm going to tell your listeners something that no one else seems to want to discuss, which is the following. Muslims are under covenant. And unlike Judaism, Sam, it's a covenant of fear. You try to leave the faith, you get killed. To become a better Muslim is to grow more intolerant, more hateful. Don't ask me, read the Quran. To become a better Christian is to grow more loving, more tolerant, despite the exceptions in places like Westboro Baptist. If you can call them a church, those are the exceptions to the rule. In the New Testament, which Christians are supposed to live by, we live by love. We're supposed to love our enemies and do good to those who are our enemies. That's revolutionary, not Islam. So what are we telling future Americans, the Americans who are going to vote, the Americans who are going to lead the future, hopefully? We're telling them that right and wrong is subjective, that it's a point of view, that everything is about context. We're essentially conditioning future Americans, Sam, to perceive right and wrong as non-existent. What does that mean for your listeners? It means that the freedom we all take for granted in the U.S., the freedom that was lost by the citizens of Massachusetts while police invaded their homes and armored cars rolled down the streets, that freedom is conditional upon a Judeo-Christian ethic. As controversial now, sadly, as that might be to say, Sam, our freedom in America is based on certain Judeo-Christian assumptions. Well, and everything is linked. As you mentioned, crisis management, I would rather refer to it as giant sleight of hand. We're seeing a massive bit of sleight of hand present, and that's the intent. What do you call it when a president goes out and does something that almost appears designed to bait a target audience, to draw them in to some sort of high-energy discussion? Well, he appoints the person largely responsible for the mismanagement of Benghazi. He appoints that individual as NSA advisor. Does that look to you to be a practical decision for a president with Obama's approval ratings and his current state of exposure? No. No, the only time you see this type of irrational behavior and arrogance on display is when an administration or a company or when there's something bigger to hide. And that's the question I would pose to your listeners today. What is so bad that this administration feels that these scandals are preferable? And that's what we're looking at. There's something else behind the curtain, so to speak, that is underway, and they're buying time by distracting all of us with a classic bit of political sleight of hand.